My dear brother, my dear sister, there is a shift happening inside you right now that many people do not recognize when it begins. It does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive with warning. It arrives quietly as a change in your energy. In the first days of Ramadan, everything felt different. Your heart felt awake. Your intentions felt strong. You woke up for suhoor not just because you had to, but because you wanted to. Even if your body was tired, your soul felt alive. You felt honored to be awake while the world was sleeping, honored to be among those Allah invited to fast for Him. When you stood in prayer, your heart felt present. When you heard the Quran, it felt personal. When you made dua, it felt like Allah was listening, and He was. You felt like this Ramadan would be the one that changes you, the one that heals you, the one that brings you back to Allah in a way you never experienced before. And for the first few days, everything felt possible. But now something feels different. Not wrong, not broken, just heavier. You still wake up, you still fast, you still pray, but it feels different than it did on day one. The emotional intensity is quieter. The excitement is softer. The energy is not the same. And this is the moment where many people become confused. They begin to wonder if something is wrong with them. They begin to wonder if their Iman is decreasing. They begin to wonder if they are losing the connection they felt at the beginning. But listen carefully, nothing is wrong with you. This is not a sign of failure. This is a sign that Ramadan has moved you to the next stage. Because the beginning of Ramadan runs on excitement, but the middle of Ramadan runs on sincerity. And excitement is easy. Excitement carries you without effort. Excitement makes worship feel light. Excitement makes sacrifice feel small. But sincerity is different. Sincerity begins when excitement ends. Sincerity begins when worship becomes heavy and you still choose it. Sincerity begins when your body feels tired, but your heart refuses to abandon Allah. This is where your real Ramadan begins, because Allah is not testing whether you can worship Him when it feels good. Allah is testing whether you will remain loyal when it feels difficult. Anyone can worship Allah when their heart is full of emotion. Anyone can worship Allah when motivation is high. Anyone can worship Allah when the environment makes it easy. But the believer Allah elevates is the believer who remains loyal when motivation fades. Because loyalty is not proven in ease. Loyalty is proven in difficulty. And Allah is now giving you the opportunity to prove your loyalty. This heaviness you feel is not a punishment. It is an invitation. An invitation to rise beyond emotion. An invitation to rise beyond temporary motivation. An invitation to worship Allah not because of how you feel, but because of who He is. Because Allah deserves your worship whether you feel strong or weak. Allah deserves your worship whether you feel motivated or tired. Allah deserves your worship whether your heart feels emotional or quiet. And when you continue to choose Allah in this state, your worship becomes more valuable than ever before. Because now it is real. Now it is sincere. Now it is coming from loyalty, not emotion. This is where most people begin to slip and they do not even realize it. They do not stop fasting. They do not stop praying. They do not abandon Ramadan completely. But something inside them begins to weaken. Their focus decreases. Their urgency fades. Their attention drifts. They begin to pray faster. They begin to delay their worship. They begin to allow distractions to return. Not because they stopped believing, but because their worship was being carried by emotion. And emotion does not last forever. Emotion is temporary, but loyalty is permanent. And Allah is now separating emotional worshippers from loyal worshippers. This separation is not visible to people, but it is visible to Allah. Allah sees who continues. Allah sees who remains disciplined. Allah sees who refuses to abandon their effort even when it becomes difficult. And every moment you remain loyal in this stage, your rank rises, even if you do not feel it, even if no one sees it. Allah sees it. And Allah never wastes sincere effort. My dear brother, my dear sister, understand this clearly. The value of your worship is not measured by how easy it feels. It is measured by how loyal you remain when it feels difficult. Because when worship feels easy, it costs you very little. But when worship feels heavy and you still choose it, it reveals who you truly are. This is why the middle of Ramadan is so powerful. Because this is where your true identity begins to form. This is where discipline replaces emotion. This is where sincerity replaces excitement. This is where loyalty replaces motivation. And loyalty is the foundation of transformation. Because the version of you that worships Allah only when it feels easy will disappear when difficulty comes. But the version of you that worships Allah even when it feels heavy becomes unshakable. This is the version of you Ramadan is trying to create. A version of you that is not controlled by emotion. A version of you that is not dependent on motivation. A version of you that remains loyal to Allah in every state. Because your life will not always feel easy. There will be days when your heart feels tired. There will be days when your motivation feels weak. There will be days when obedience feels heavy. And if your worship is dependent on emotion, it will not survive those days. But if your worship is built on loyalty, it will survive everything. This is why Allah brings you to this moment. Not to break you, but to strengthen you. Not to push you away, but to pull you closer. Because the believer who continues in difficulty becomes stronger than the believer who worships only in ease. And Allah loves the believer who remains loyal, even when their heart feels quiet, even when their body feels tired, even when their motivation fades. Because that believer is worshipping Allah not for emotional reward, but for Allah Himself. And this is the highest level of sincerity. My dear brother, my dear sister, do not misunderstand this moment. Do not see this heaviness as weakness. See it as elevation. Because Allah is training your soul. Allah is teaching you discipline. Allah is preparing you for a level of closeness that cannot be reached through emotion alone. This is your moment to prove something to Allah, not through words, but through consistency, not through emotion, but through loyalty. Continue waking up, continue praying, continue making dua, continue choosing Allah, even when it feels heavy, especially when it feels heavy, because this is where your transformation is happening. This is where your old self is being left behind. This is where your new self is being built. And one day, you will look back at this moment and realize this was the moment your relationship with Allah became real. This was the moment your loyalty became unbreakable. This was the moment your heart stopped worshipping based on emotion and started worshipping based on conviction. And that is the believer Allah elevates. That is the believer Allah strengthens. That is the believer Allah brings closer. So do not slip now. Do not slow down now. Because what you do in this stage matters more than how you started. This is where your sincerity is proven. This is where your loyalty is written. This is where your Ramadan becomes real. Shaitan is chained, so now Allah is showing you what your nafs still controls. My dear brother, my dear sister, there is a truth about Ramadan that many people hear, but very few people truly understand. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, told us that when Ramadan begins, the devils are chained. Think about what that means. The greatest external force that whispers evil restrained. The greatest external influence that pulls you towards sin weakened. The greatest external enemy that spent the entire year trying to distance you from Allah restricted. And yet, you still feel struggle. You still feel resistance. You still feel the pull toward distraction. You still feel the weight of your old habits calling you. And this confuses many people. They wonder, if shaitan is chained, why is this still difficult? The answer is something Ramadan is trying to teach you. Not all of your struggle came from shaitan. Some of it came from what shaitan built inside you over time. Your nafs. Your nafs is the part of you that learned patterns. It learned comfort. It learned delay. It learned distraction. It learned to choose what feels easy over what is right. For 11 months, your nafs was trained. Not in one moment, but slowly, quietly, through repetition. Every time you delayed a prayer, your nafs learned delay. Every time you chose distraction over remembrance, your nafs learned distraction. Every time you followed comfort instead of discipline, your nafs learned comfort. And habits repeated long enough begin to feel normal. They begin to feel natural. They begin to feel like part of who you are. But Ramadan arrives to break that illusion, because Ramadan removes shaitan's direct influence and so you can finally see what remains inside you. Ramadan is holding up a mirror to your soul. It is showing you what still controls you, not to shame you, but to free you, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. And many people spent the entire year blaming shaitan for things their nafs had already accepted. But now shaitan is chained, and what remains is your own discipline, your own habits, your own choices. This is why day 6 feels different. Because now you are no longer fighting an external enemy alone. You are confronting an internal one. Your nafs still remembers the comfort of sleeping through prayer. Your nafs still remembers the comfort of endless distraction. Your nafs still remembers the comfort of choosing ease over effort. And it whispers to you in a different way, not as aggressively as shaitan, but more subtly. It tells you you can do it later. It tells you you've already done enough. It tells you you don't need to push yourself today. And if you listen, slowly your discipline weakens, not in one moment, but gradually, quietly. And this is where Ramadan becomes powerful, because Ramadan is not only teaching you to resist shaitan, Ramadan is teaching you to master yourself. This is the higher level of struggle, because shaitan can whisper, but your nafs can decide. Shaitan can suggest, but your nafs can act. And Allah created you with the ability to control your nafs, not instantly, not easily, but through consistent effort, through conscious choice, through loyalty to Him. Every time you feel resistance and choose Allah anyway, your nafs becomes weaker. Every time you feel lazy and pray anyway, your nafs loses authority. Every time you feel distracted and return to remembrance anyway, your soul becomes stronger. This is how transformation happens, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet decisions, repeated consistently. My dear brother, my dear sister, understand the honor Allah has given you right now. Allah did not remove shaitan from your life in Ramadan so you could relax. Allah removed shaitan so you could see your true self clearly. So you could see what still needs healing. So you could see what still needs discipline. So you could see what still needs surrender. Because shaitan will return after Ramadan. But if you strengthen yourself now, he will not control you the same way again. Ramadan is training you for the rest of your life. It is teaching you that you are not weak. It is teaching you that you are not controlled by your habits. It is teaching you that you are capable of choosing Allah even when your nafs pulls you in another direction. And every moment you resist your nafs, Allah sees it. Even when no one else does, even when it feels small, even when it feels unnoticed, Allah sees the internal struggle no one else can see. Allah sees the moment you choose discipline over comfort. Allah sees the moment you choose prayer over sleep. Allah sees the moment you choose remembrance over distraction, and Allah rewards you for it. Not just with reward in the akhirah, but with strength in your soul, because every act of discipline reshapes who you are. Slowly, the nafs that once controlled you becomes quieter. Slowly, the habits that once defined you begin to break. Slowly, the version of you that was weak becomes strong. This is the purpose of Ramadan. Not just to make you hungry, but to make you free. Free from your habits, free from your weaknesses, free from everything that controlled you except Allah. And this freedom is not given instantly. It is built decision by decision, moment by moment, choice by choice. So when you feel that internal resistance, do not see it as failure. See it as the battlefield where your soul is being strengthened. Because the believer who masters their nafs becomes unbreakable. And Allah loves the believer who fights their nafs for His sake. This day 6 is not exposing your weakness. It is exposing your opportunity. An opportunity to take back control. An opportunity to rebuild your discipline. An opportunity to become the version of yourself your soul was always meant to be. Do not surrender now. Because every moment you resist your nafs, you are stepping closer to Allah. And every step closer to Allah changes your entire destiny. This is the day your discipline is tested, not your ability to fast, but your ability to remain sincere. My dear brother, my dear sister, By day 6, something important has already happened. Your body has adjusted. The first fast was difficult. Your body resisted. Your hunger felt sharp. Your thirst felt distracting. Your routine felt unfamiliar. But now your body has learned. You know when to wake up. You know when to break your fast. You know how to move through the day without food and drink. Your body is no longer in shock. And this is where many people misunderstand the real purpose of Ramadan. Because Ramadan was never meant to only train your body. Ramadan was meant to train your heart. Anyone can stop eating. Anyone can stop drinking. But not everyone can remain sincere. Not everyone can remain consistent. Not everyone can remain loyal when the emotional intensity fades. And this is the deeper test that begins now. Because fasting from food is visible, but fasting with sincerity is invisible. People can see when you refuse food, but only Allah can see when you refuse distraction. People can see when you stand in prayer, but only Allah can see when your heart is truly present. People can see your actions, but only Allah can see your sincerity. And sincerity is what gives your actions value. Without sincerity, actions become empty movements. Without sincerity, worship becomes routine. Without sincerity, Ramadan becomes a temporary interruption instead of a permanent transformation. This is why day 6 is dangerous for many people. Not because they stop fasting physically, but because they begin to fast emotionally. Their body continues, but their heart disconnects. They pray, but their mind is elsewhere. They recite Quran, but their attention drifts. They make dua, but their urgency weakens. Not intentionally, not deliberately, but gradually, quietly. And this is how sincerity begins to slip. Because sincerity requires discipline. Sincerity requires presence. Sincerity requires effort. It requires you to choose Allah consciously, not just follow a routine automatically. And routines are easy to perform without thinking, but sincerity requires awareness. It requires you to remember who you are standing before. It requires you to remember who you are worshipping. It requires you to remember that Allah sees your heart, not just your actions. My dear brother, my dear sister, this is where your discipline becomes more important than your motivation. Because motivation is temporary. Motivation comes and goes. Motivation rises and falls, but discipline remains. Discipline carries you when motivation disappears. Discipline keeps you consistent when emotions are quiet. Discipline protects your relationship with Allah when your feelings are weak. And Allah loves discipline because discipline reflects sincerity. It reflects loyalty. It reflects commitment. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us that the most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are consistent even if they are small. Not the deeds that are dramatic ones, not the deeds that are emotional temporarily, but the deeds that remain consistent, because consistency proves that your worship is real. Consistency proves that your loyalty is not dependent on emotion. Consistency proves that your heart has truly surrendered to Allah. This is why day 6 matters so much, because this is where consistency becomes difficult. This is where the emotional excitement fades. This is where your nafs begins to test your discipline. It begins to whisper, you've already done enough. It begins to whisper, you can relax now. It begins to whisper, you can do more later. And slowly, if you listen, your consistency weakens. Your prayers become less focused. Your Quran becomes less frequent. Your dua becomes less urgent. Not because you stopped believing, but because your discipline weakened. And this is the trap. Because transformation is not built through emotional moments. Transformation is built through consistent loyalty. The believer who changes permanently is not the believer who worshipped intensely once. It is the believer who remained loyal consistently. Even when no one was watching, even when it felt heavy, even when it felt quiet. Because Allah does not look at how powerfully you started. Allah looks at how sincerely you continued. Every moment you remain consistent, your soul becomes stronger. Every moment you protect your sincerity, your heart becomes cleaner. Every moment you choose Allah again, your identity becomes more stable. This is how believers are built, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet consistency. And this consistency is shaping your akhirah. Even if you do not see it now, even if you do not feel it now, Allah sees it. Allah records it, Allah rewards it, and the reward for sincere consistency is beyond what you can imagine. My dear brother, my dear sister, do not underestimate this stage. Do not allow your worship to become automatic. Do not allow your heart to become disconnected. Renew your intention. Remind yourself why you are fasting. Remind yourself why